The galaxy had forgotten what war sounded like. For 1,000 standard cycles, no star burned from orbital fire, no fleets vanished into debris fields, and no worlds learned the meaning of extinction. History had been archived, conflict had been studied, and violence had been reduced to a theoretical construct, something discussed in academies, reenacted in simulations, and politely dismissed as an uncivilized phase of evolution. Peace was not celebrated anymore. It was assumed. Entire species were born, matured, and died without ever hearing a weapon discharge in anger. Military parades became ceremonial performances, their ships polished relics, their admirals politicians in uniform. The galactic conquered had done what no empire before it could claim. It had ended war not by conquest, but by consensus. And then someone declared war on humanity. The declaration itself was flawless. Proper phrasing, ancient protocols followed to the letter. 100 translators rendered it into 1,000 languages, ensuring that no nuance was lost, no insult unintended. It was broadcast from the conquered central chamber, where representatives of 200 species watched with quiet confidence as the message was transmitted into human-controlled space. There was no malice in the room, no hatred, only certainty. Humanity, after all, was not considered dangerous. They were loud, emotional, contradictory creatures who had arrived late to the galactic stage and never quite learned how to behave once they were there. They argued endlessly in open forums, produced a disturbing volume of fictional war scenarios, and refused, politely but firmly, to dismantle their kinetic weapon stockpiles even after joining the conquered. That alone had marked them as primitive. Energy weapons were elegant, shields were humane. War, as it had once existed, was wasteful and inelegant, an embarrassing artifact of desperation. The conquered had moved beyond such things. Humans had not. They kept their old weapons, their missiles, their railguns, their contingency doctrines. They claimed it was cultural preservation. The galaxy assumed it was insecurity. When the vote came to issue a corrective declaration, a limited conflict designed to force compliance, no one opposed it. Not because they hated humans, but because they believed the outcome was obvious. The message crossed the void in silence, and then the galaxy waited for fear. What they received instead was laughter. It came through open channels, unfiltered and unhurried, not manic, not hysterical, just amused. A low, genuine sound followed by a pause long enough to be uncomfortable. Then a human voice spoke. It did not shout, it did not threaten, it sounded tired. "You've made a mistake," the voice said, "but you're going to understand that soon enough." The transmission ended. In the conquered chamber, confusion rippled through the delegates. Laughter was not a recognized response to a declaration of war. Panic would have made sense. Anger, even defiance, would have fit the model, but laughter. Analysts were summoned. Cultural experts reviewed human psychological profiles. Some suggested bravado, a species bluffing in the face of inevitable defeat. Others proposed denial. No one suggested fear, because fear, they believed, would come later. The fleet was already moving. The conquered's enforcement arm had not seen real combat in centuries, but its presence was overwhelming. Thousands of ships, unified by shared doctrine and immaculate coordination, slid into formation with practiced grace. Their hulls glowed with harmonic energy fields. Their weapons were calibrated for precision incapacitation. The goal was not destruction. The goal was compliance. As the fleet crossed into human-controlled space, they encountered no resistance. No warning shots, no diplomatic protests. Traffic continued along civilian lanes. Stations remained operational. Planets rotated peacefully beneath indifferent stars. It was as if nothing was happening. That unsettled some of the younger commanders. War, even theoretical war, was supposed to disrupt systems, generate chaos, trigger alarms. Human space remained calm, too calm. Scouting vessels reported anomalous readings, not weapons, not shields, but absences. Entire regions where sensors returned nothing but background radiation, as if space itself had been emptied. The data was flagged as error and dismissed. Human technology, after all, was known to be inefficient. The first engagement was meant to be symbolic, a human border outpost, lightly armed, strategically irrelevant. The fleet would disable its defenses, transmit terms, and withdraw. A demonstration, nothing more. The order was given. Energy lances struck the station's shields and passed through empty space. There were no shields. Before confusion could escalate, something else happened. One moment the outpost was there. The next it was gone, not destroyed, not fragmented, simply erased. The sensors screamed as mass vanished faster than physics allowed. Then the forward scouts disappeared. Then the ships behind them. No energy signatures, no buildup, no warning, just absence. The fleet halted. Commanders demanded reports. Systems ran diagnostics. Weapons were powered down, then up again. No enemy signatures appeared on scans, and then a new signal emerged, not a broadcast. A data packet, human. It contained no threats, no demands, only a historical record, footage of human wars, not simulations, not dramatizations, actual records, unfiltered and exhaustive. Trenches filled with mud and bodies, cities reduced to ash, skies torn open by fire, nuclear detonations, planetary evacuations that failed, extinction-level events narrowly survived. The packet ended with a single line of text: "Peace is what we do when we are not preparing." The fleet began to withdraw, not in panic, not yet. But for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy felt something unfamiliar tighten around its collective consciousness. Doubt, because this was not how a weak species behaved. And somewhere, deep in human space, ancient systems long kept dormant began to wake, not with urgency, not with excitement, but with the calm efficiency of tools finally needed again. The humans were not angry, they were disappointed, and the galaxy had just reminded them why they never stopped preparing. The retreat did not restore confidence. Across the conquered fleet, commanders told themselves it was a tactical pause, a recalibration, a necessary response to an unexpected anomaly. Reports were filed, sensor data replayed, and models rebuilt from first principles. Every explanation assumed the same foundation: that human technology was inferior, that what had happened was either a trick, a malfunction, or an isolated capability that could be countered once understood. What none of them admitted, what none of them were trained to admit, was that the humans had not reacted like a species under threat. They had reacted like a species inconvenienced. In the days that followed, the conquered attempted communication again. Not a declaration this time, but a clarification. Carefully chosen language expressed regret for misinterpretation, reaffirmed the conquered's commitment to peace, and proposed immediate negotiations under neutral arbitration. The message was transmitted to Earth itself. It went unanswered. Human space remained open, active, and disturbingly normal. Civilian traffic flowed. Data nets hummed. No mobilizations were detected. No mass evacuations. No emergency broadcasts filled the spectrum. It was as if the war existed only in the minds of those who had declared it. That illusion ended when the first human counteraction began. There was no announcement, no warning. Across 3 separate sectors, conquered logistics hubs, vast, automated complexes responsible for fueling fleets and maintaining supply chains, simply stopped responding. At first, administrators assumed network outages, then local power failures, then sabotage. By the time probes were dispatched, it was too late. The hubs were intact, their structures unbroken, their reactors stable, but every ship docked within them was gone. not destroyed, not drifting, gone. Entire armadas had vanished without triggering a single defensive system. Panic spread, not loud, uncontrolled panic, but something colder. Officers began to realize that they were not losing battles. They were losing assets without ever engaging an enemy. Humanity was not meeting them on the field. Humanity was dismantling the war itself. Galactic analysts worked without rest, tearing through every scrap of human data the conquered possessed. Cultural archives, once dismissed as entertainment, were re-examined. Fictional war scenarios were mapped against real events. Patterns emerged that made even the most seasoned strategists uneasy. Humans did not optimize for victory. They optimized for inevitability. Their historical conflicts revealed a species that assumed systems would fail, treaties would break, and enemies would adapt. Every plan contained redundancies layered upon redundancies. Every doctrine assumed the worst-case scenario was not just possible, but likely. They had never believed peace was permanent. Peace, to humans, was a pause between disasters. That understanding reshaped everything. When the conquered attempted to fortify its core worlds, human strikes bypassed them entirely. Data repositories vanished. Navigation beacons failed. Entire regions of space became unusable as precise gravitational disruptions rendered established lanes unstable. No civilian targets were touched. No population centers attacked. This was not terror. This was surgery. And the message was clear to anyone willing to see it. Humanity was not punishing the conquered. It was removing its ability to fight at all. At last, the humans spoke again. The broadcast did not come from a single planet or authority. It was distributed, redundant, impossible to block. A human figure appeared on countless screens across the galaxy, unremarkable in appearance, seated, hands folded, eyes steady. "We don't want your worlds," the human said. "We don't want your resources. We don't want your surrender." A pause. "We want this to end before it becomes something we can't justify stopping." The words hit harder than any weapon, because they implied a limit, and that meant there was something beyond it. The conquered council convened in emergency session. Fear was no longer abstract. Delegates spoke openly of extinction scenarios, something that had not been seriously discussed in centuries. The question dominating the chamber was no longer how to win, but whether survival was still an option. It was then that historians, working desperately through human archives, found the final piece. Humanity's greatest fear was not invasion, it was stagnation. Their species had nearly destroyed itself multiple times, not through war alone, but through complacency, through believing that the systems protecting them would always hold. Every near extinction had taught the same lesson: comfort breeds vulnerability, so they never allowed themselves to be comfortable for long. The conquered, in its thousand-year peace, had done exactly that. The final confrontation never came. There was no climactic battle, no last stand of fleets against fleets. Instead, the war ended the way it had been fought, quietly, decisively, and on human terms. Human forces demonstrated once and only once what escalation would look like. A distant, uninhabited star system was altered, not destroyed, changed. Its stellar output was dimmed, controlled, reshaped with precision that defied existing physics. "This is restraint," the human broadcast explained. "What comes after restraint is not something we are proud of." The conquered withdrew its declaration of war within the hour. A new law was entered into galactic record, ratified without dissent. Humanity was to be left alone, not isolated, not feared openly, simply respected. Trade resumed, borders stabilized, and humans returned to silence, their fleets vanishing back into the depths of their territory, their weapons once again unseen. A century later, young species would study the event in academies, struggling to understand how a laughing response to war had undone a galactic order. Their instructors would always end with the same conclusion. Humans did not laugh because they thought war was funny. They laughed because they had already survived the worst wars imaginable and knew exactly what came next when peace was mistaken for weakness. The thousand-year peace ended not with fire or screams, but with a quiet, irreversible realization. Some species do not seek dominance. They prepare for the day dominance seeks them.